What is a deficit deadlift? A deficit deadlift is when you pull the deadlift through a longer range of movement. What this means is you're going to stand on a box or a load of mats. So you're higher and therefore the bar is going to travel further than if it was from the floor. What is the deficit deadlift useful for? Due to the longer range of movement, it improves leg drive off the floor because you have to get in a lower position to get to the bar. But it also improves lockout because it takes longer for the bar to travel up and it does move at a slower velocity, thus recruiting your lockout strength and power that little bit more. I always like to base things on a predictor lift. So if I'm going to include something, I want a reason why. So with regards to predictor lifts, the 4-inch deficit deadlift with a clean grip, or even the snatch grip, which is a longer range of pull, but obviously not a deficit deadlift, I like to keep these two lifts 85 to 90% regardless of the sport. So if you can deadlift 200 kilos from the floor, you need to be able to deadlift 170 to 180 kilos from those two deficit deadlift options. How much deficit will actually be limited by your mobility. I'm not a fan of huge amounts of lumbar flexion. So if someone is using a 2-inch deficit but they're flexing their lumbar, it's more often than not that I would either try going from a 1-inch deficit or even from the floor to eradicate any lumbar flexion and potential injuries in the long term. What periodization strategies are there? One easy one is to reduce the deficit each week or even each phase. So you could spend 1 to 3 weeks at one height, reduce it an inch, and so on and so forth. So if you started at 4 inches, the next phase would be 3, 2, 1, finishing from the floor. Another strategy I like to use is the same deficit, but a narrower grip. Again, periodizing to getting from the floor. So what would that mean? It could be that you start on a 4-inch deficit with a snatch grip. We do 2 weeks of that. Then we move to a clean grip. The clean grip means the deficit is slightly reduced. Then we would go and reduce the deficit, but go back to a snatch grip. So then we would go 2 inches snatch grip, 2 inches clean grip, snatch grip from the floor, peaking with clean grip from the floor again. Another easy way is to use the deficit during accumulation phases. Accumulation phases are phases where you're looking at prioritizing volume as opposed to intensity. Intensity is obviously lower than from the floor because it's lighter, so it lends itself very well as an accumulation phase lift. A final thought is to use it as a potentiator. You could simply warm up to certain percentages from the deficit and then move from the floor. Often what happens is people find the lift from the floor even easier after doing those longer range warm-ups. So it will potentiate your nervous system, allowing you to lift more total weight. There are though some special considerations. Number one, it is a longer range. With that in mind, you first of all want to think about the fact that you're going to be using a longer tempo. There's going to be an extra second added on to each set at least. Due to that longer range, it's more likely than not that you're going to be using less reps because of the higher time under tension per set. Lastly, what you're going to experience overall is slower velocities than from the floor. What this does is it turns it into a strength speed movement. It's going to help your ability to grind out reps because you're grinding out more and more reps because of the deficit, because of that longer range. This is going to impact recovery. So it's something that's going to be harder to recover from overall.